Hi everyone, welcome to episode 11 of the Knitted by Whitney podcast. Wait, that doesn't seem right.
That's better. I hope you enjoyed that little snippet of Doyle in his Montrealer hoodie. I just finished it this morning and I'm feeling so good about finishing it. I haven't blocked it yet. We haven't taken final pictures yet. We're going to do all that later today. But I wanted to record my episode because it's a beautiful day. It's a little too beautiful, as in it's a little hot. So I wanted an excuse to stay in the AC. So I decided to record my episode. Speaking of the AC, if you hear a little bit of air in the background, that is our AC unit. It is right above my head, but it is way too hot outside to not have it on. So sorry if you can hear it, but I need to stay cool. I am starting off today's episode with a new mug of the episode. This is part of a set of not quite matching, but kind of cute together mugs that Doyle and I picked up at HomeSense last time we were there. I have the other one right here. They are both cat mugs, and we got them because they remind us of our two tortie cats that we have. We have 3 cats, actually, and a dog. But our 2 tortie cats are sisters. They're Klondike and Nugget. I've talked about them a bit, and sometimes they've shown up on the podcast. Klondike was actually sitting in Doyle's lap when we started the episode. But because both Klondike and Nugget have lots of different expressions, we liked these mugs because they really showed off both of the girls. We like to think of this one as the Klondike mug because it's got lots of little happy-faced cats on it, and Klondike is generally a really happy cat. She's very loving, especially towards Doyle. She is very much Doyle's cat. She loves him so much. And this one, with the not quite happy camper cat, is more Nugget, because Nugget is more selective of who she wants to spend her time with and how she wants to show affection. However, once a day, usually in the afternoons, there is Snugget time. And that is when Nugget finds whoever is closest, typically Doyle because he works from home, and just snuggles him intensely. Like, you cannot get away from her snuggles. She won't let you. So we thought these mugs were really cute, so we got them because they looked like our cats. And both Doyle's mug and my mug have a little bit of bubbly today. Not, the alcoholic bubbly. This is just like the bubbly tonic water, flavored tonic water. And Doyle's is cherry, mine is green apple. And these are really nice and refreshing on a hot day. So, cheers! So you've already seen it a bit in action, but let me show you again. Doyle's hoodie! So, this is a project, and I'm going to tell you all about this project. I will start off with my absolute favorite thing about this project, which is the gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous yarn from Kate over at Red Door Fiber Studios. This is from her Akatar collection, and these are her 2 Resand colors. The tonal is Impressive Wingspan, if you know, you know. And the variegated is One Hell of a High Lord. And these are absolutely perfect colors for Resand. And of course, they were perfect colors for Doyle because Doyle's favorite color is purple. And to me, this is one of my favorite tones of purple. It's one of his favorite as well. It's more of a bluish purple, not quite a true royal purple that's more intense. This is a really nice balanced tone of purple. Let me just grab the skeins so I can show you what it looks like in a skein. So technically they're not in skein form anymore because I wound all of them up, and I'm going to explain why. And I should show off, this is in a new little project bag that I picked up. I picked this up at a market in Dartmouth, and I got it from Nerds and Needles. I will link them down below. They're a great market seller, project bag maker. They dye yarn, they sell notions, they have all kinds of stuff. But they are local to me here in Nova Scotia. And I picked this up last time I was at the market. And let me see if I can show it to you. It says, I knit therefore I swear. If you know, you know, right? I wound up all of my skeins because using hand-dyed yarn is both a really wonderful experience because you're using an absolutely beautiful, unique product, but it's also tricky because you're using a unique product in the sense that every single skein is unique, even if they're dyed in the same pan or dye batch or on the same day by the same dyer. They can all turn out completely different. So most indie dyers have really, really good recipes and they manage to produce a pretty consistent product, but they are not miracle workers. They are not magicians. Sometimes dye lots look a little different. Sometimes skeins from the same pan look a little different. And I encountered a slightly different colored skein in my order that I made. Now, because Kate's ACOTAR collection was a special order and I did not know if I would be able to ever get it again, I over-ordered for this particular project. I think, let's say for example, I needed 5.5 balls of the purple and 1.5 balls of the variegated. I bought 7 purple and 3 variegated because I wanted to make sure there was no chance that I would run out, because if I ran out of yarn, I would be screwed because I could never get this yarn again. So just to save future Whitney a headache, I over-ordered what I needed. So I do have quite a bit of yarn left over, and that's okay. I don't know yet if I'm going to use it for another project, maybe a little accessory for myself, or if I might want to sell it. So, looking a little bit closer at the yarn, this is a particular skein. This happens to be my oddball skein, which is the one skein that did not match the rest of the order. And it's not that it didn't match very, obviously, like, oh, that's not even purple. It's not like that. It's very clearly the same purple. It's just a slightly different tone of the purple. So let me hold it closer so you can get a better idea of the color. You might be able to tell that it's not quite the same tone of purple as the hoodie. This one is a very pinkish purple. Not so much the bluish purple that I described the hoodie as. So now we'll do a comparison, and I will show you the yarns side by side. Here's my very bluish purple hood. Here's my pinkish purple skein, and I'll bring that closer. You can kind of tell they don't quite match. And that is nothing wrong with the yarn. And that is nothing that Kate did wrong as a dyer. It is hand-dyed yarn, which means it is a unique product from skein to skein to skein. So you are never guaranteed that it is going to match perfectly. If you have an awesome dyer like Kate, and you order 7 balls, and only one of them looks different, you've got an awesome dyer on your hands. So props to Kate for making almost every single skein look the same. It is a little easier with tonal than it is with variegated, but even my variegated skeins of One Hell of a High Lord looked identical. I could not pick them apart. So I have one of those still skeined up. Now I'm using my words intermittently because technically these are caked up, because these are yarn cakes. But I'm a bit of a lazy knitter and I interchange all of the terms all the time. So you get what you get from me today. Summer Whitney is a little more sassy. So here's One Hell of a High Lord, and this is what it looks like in a cake, albeit it's a bit of a messy cake because I was knitting from it, and this is my leftovers. I also have one other skein that is still a skein up in my yarn stash that I didn't touch. So don't know what I want to do with that yet. But I wound up all of the purples because I had noticed that that one was a little different, so then I had to cake up all of them to see if that was the only one that was different or if I had a few that were different. But this is what it looks like when it is all caked up. Lots of variation. So when it comes to variegated yarns, there is like slightly different styles of variegated dyeing. This one is a very speckled, tonal, like the type of variegation that there's no repetition to the skein. So when it's all in a circle of a skein, it's not purple goes here, gray goes here, blue goes here. And when you knit, it almost like repeats itself, which is called pooling. So when you're dyeing variegated yarns, you can get skeins that end up with a lot of pooling because they have color repeated in the same areas of the skein. Or you can have this style, which is very much speckled, really truly variegated, color is all over the place on the skein. When you knit it, it doesn't create that pooling effect. And then there is what's called intentional pooling, which is when a very small bit of the skein is dyed one color and the rest of it is dyed another color, so that you always have that one color in the same spot. You see this the most in socks. Like, you can really tell the different styles of variegated yarn when people have knit socks because they're knit on small circumference and you see those repetitions all the time. But looking at this sweater, and if you look at my stripes, none of the colors appear at the same time. So I have a little bit of blue, then the purple, then gray, then white, and then the next row down, purple's over here, then it's white, then it's blue, then it's gray. So they're all over the place. So I loved that about the variegated yarn because pooling is just kind of annoying. But anyway, I am in love with this yarn. It's 100% superwash merino, and it is Kate's worsted base. So to knit this sweater, I used US 7 4.5 millimeter needles, and then to do the ribbing on the bottom and on the sleeve cuffs, I used a US 5 3.75 millimeter, which is different from the pattern. It's one of a few deviations that I made from the pattern, because when I changed from my 7s to my 6s, which is a 4 millimeter needle, my ribbing was really loose. And a general explanation of this sweater can be that it is a loose sweater. But I'm going to get into that in a little bit more detail. Right now I'm just talking about the specifics. So I tried again with my US 5s or 3.75 millimeter needles, and I liked it a lot better. I am showing you all of the inside here. It is probably a mess with all of my ends. Worst thing about doing stripes or color work is that you have a lot of ends to weave in. But I'm going to share with you probably my favorite way of weaving in ends. I will link the video below. It is the Weave-In Stephen method. And as you can probably guess, it was invented by Stephen West. And it is because all of his work has lots of color changes. So he developed a way of breaking your yarn and hiding those tails as easily as possible, so you don't have to spend hours weaving in every end one at a time after you're done your project. So I think it's a little easier for me to show it to you in a sleeve. I just turn this sleeve inside out. You know, it's not super clean. It is kind of messy, but you can see how my ends are woven in. And you do that as you're knitting. So it means when you're done your project, you don't then have to sit there for an hour with your tapestry needle, weaving all the ends in. So I really loved that because I am a lazy knitter, and I really hate having to weave in ends almost as much as I hate seaming. Weaving in ends is not so bad because it doesn't take as long, but I still don't like to do it. Because to me, I enjoy knitting because it's knitting, not because it's sewing. And I personally really don't enjoy hand sewing. I find it very tedious. I find it takes a long time. I generally just don't enjoy it. So finding a method like the Weave-In Stephen to hide all my ends as I knitted, was a game changer. Loved it. I did use it in a previous pattern as well. I think I used it for my sugar plum jumper, just because I found that yes, that's actually the first time that I used this method. And it's because, no, I didn't use it. I used wefting, which is similar to the weave-in Steven. But anyway, using a chainette style yarn, you can't do a lot of the same joins that you're used to. So you can't spit splice, which I don't like doing anyway. I find it kind of gross, and I really don't like the felted texture that it gives to yarn afterwards. Can't do Russian join because it's really hard to like get your needle in to like feed the ends in. I just don't trust magic knot. I've had them come undone and it terrifies me. So I was looking up different options for joining ends of chainette yarn, and I found the wefting technique, and it said it was similar to the weave-in Steven. So then I looked up weave-in Steven, found it out, knew that I was going to be doing a 2-color sweater in the future. So I used this technique throughout this entire sweater, and let me tell you, it worked wonderfully. I highly recommend it. Super easy join. Loved it. So moving on to talk about the pattern. This is, like I mentioned, the Montrealer Hoodie. It is designed by Vincent Dells, who goes by the handle by Dells. This is my first time using one of Vincent's patterns, and it wasn't the best experience, I'm not gonna lie. Part of it is fit. Most of it is fit. Almost all of it is fit. Part of that also might be because Doyle has a very specific body shape. Doyle is very T-shaped, which means that he has broad shoulders and a broad chest, but then he has a more narrow waist that is more in line with a size down from what his chest size is. So finding things to fit can be tricky for Doyle. So I thought, yay, knitwear, I can personalize it to him. And I thought, because I was picking a pattern that was designed specifically for men, it might already have that in the pattern. It did not. Not that it had to. Obviously, just because you're designing for men doesn't mean you're going to know all the ins and outs of men's physiques and how all men's physiques are different, just like women's physiques are very different. So when I started the pattern and I had Doyle try it on shortly after I had separated for the body and sleeves, I got really nervous. Now, I mean really nervous, because it looked too big. Really too big. But Doyle was happy with how it fit his chest, which is what he wanted the most. He wanted it to fit his chest more than he wanted it to fit any other part of his body, because he hates having things be too tight. He's very particular about how he likes his clothes to fit his body, just like a lot of people are. And he gets very uncomfortable when things are tight on his chest or tight on his shoulders. So for him, it was more important to have those parts of the sweater fit and have the other parts be a little baggy, and he would be fine with it. Because that's generally what happens for him with store-bought clothes, because a lot of store-bought men's clothing is shaped as a rectangle. It's like a t-shirt, for example, comes out for the sleeves and then comes straight down for the body. It is shaped like the word t-shirt. Moving on. So when he tried it on for the first time, I got very, very nervous because it looked too big. The neckline was way out to here, and it was dipping down to here. The armpits were way out here. The body was very loose, and I almost wanted to cry because I thought to myself, am I going to have to knit this sweater again from scratch in the next size down? That's what was going through my mind. And I just said to myself, okay, let me do the hood next, because maybe that will bring in the neck, and then that will tell me how much more I need to do for the body, because I was following the instructions, which said to knit until the body measured a certain length. I was maybe 5 inches away from that, and it was already almost at Doyle's waist. And that was the length you had to do before the ribbing. And the ribbing itself is 2.5 inches. So it wanted me to knit an extra 7.5 inches, and it was already hitting probably just above Doyle's belly button. There was no reason for me to need an extra 7.5 inches. So I knew that I needed to do the hood in order to bring in the neck to make the sweater fit higher on his shoulders in order to see how much length I really needed to continue knitting. So I looked up what other knitters had done for this pattern on Ravelry, and I got a similar consensus from a lot of them in that the hood is weird. And I've never knit a hood before. Didn't exactly want to start with one that a lot of people said was weird. That sounded a little complicated. And most of the complaints about it were that you had to knit it in 2 separate panels, and then you had to seam up the back, or from the back all the way to the front. And I thought to myself, a seamed hood, do I really want to do that? No. I knew I had another pattern in my library. I had bought 2 of Juan's, Alexander Tavel's pattern, Clubhouse Raglan Hoodie, I think is what it's called. I'll link everything below, of course. And I knew when she released that pattern, she was just gushing about her hood design because she was so proud of how the hood turned out. And after doing that hood on this pattern, I gotta say, oh my god, Alexi, that hood is awesome. You nailed it. It was so easy to do. It looks just like a store-bought hood. It fits like a store-bought hood. It is awesome. So, I have not knit the rest of the Clubhouse Raglan hoodie, so I can't speak to the rest of that pattern. But the hood part is awesome. Although I had to fudge some things because I was working with a different yarn size, and I was working with a different stitch count, different sizing, all that stuff. So I did have to play around with some stuff, but it worked out perfectly. So this is the hood. And in the Montrealer, because it has short rows in it, you're actually starting at the back center right here. With Alexi's hood, you're starting from the front center. But both options used a provisional cast on. So I had already started with my provisional cast on in order to start the body. So I picked up my provisional cast on, but instead of picking it up literally from each end, which I had here on the center back, I picked up in the center of these stitches here. Don't mind that end. It's hiding. You can't see that. So I found what the center of the stitches would be, which would have been the center front, and I picked up around this way. And then when you go to knit it, you're knitting back and forth in a semicircle, which is a little tricky at first because you're starting off of something that is in the round. So even though you're going back and forth, you don't have that same looseness and flexibility that you do when you're holding your stitches straight. So if you were to do this, you would definitely need to use your circular needles in order to do the hood, even though it's knit flat, because it wants to stay in a circle because you're working off of a circle of stitches, but you're going back and forth and you're creating a semicircle on top. But this hood just has awesome shaping. So any hood is going to have this like slight point to it. And that's just, hoods in general are going to have that because you have to come to an end at some point. But Alexi added some nice shaping to it, so it's not just like a point of, you know, a corner. Like it doesn't look like a corner. It actually does shape it a bit so it's more round. This gorgeous Kitchener stitch where you cannot tell where one side ends and the other begins. It looks gorgeous, stunning, love it. And then it has this edging here in order to put your drawstrings in. And you might already notice I did not use I-cords for the drawstring. I'm actually not a big fan of I-cords. I don't enjoy knitting them. I don't really enjoy what they look like. I like cotton rope much better. So I used cotton rope, which I have for making all of my little project bags that I make. So I had plenty on hand. And Doyle was happy with the cotton cord as well. So it was a little tricky adding the hood from a different pattern onto this one. But in the end, it was actually pretty easy. And I loved that I didn't have to seam all the way up the back. And I don't mind doing Kitchener stitch. I know some people find it tedious, but I've done it a couple times now, and I've really gotten into a groove with it. I find it flows really nicely. It reminds me a lot of the tubular bind off that I do, so I really didn't mind at all. And once I had the hood, I had Doyle try on the sweater again, and I just breathed a sigh of relief. Like, I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, thank God. I don't have to knit this sweater all over again from scratch in a smaller size. It started to fit nicer, and it made me realize I needed to get the finishing elements of this sweater done in order to see the proper finished fit. So I just relaxed. I said to myself, I'm just going to do it all the way to the end, and if I get to the end, do all the finishing touches, and it still doesn't fit right, I can have this done so that we can take our engagement pictures in October. And then after that, I'll go back in and do sweater surgery and fix it and do shaping and whatnot when I have more time to do so. Because I was on a bit of a deadline with this project. I know I said I wouldn't do deadline knits again because they never make me feel good. But this was a deadline of my own making because I knew I wanted us to wear sweaters that I knit for us in our engagement shoot. And I thought I had all the time in the world. And then spring just disappeared. The whole 3 months of spring, March, April, May, just gone. Like Thanos snapped his fingers, gone. And before I knew it, it was June, and it was like midway through June, and I realized, oh boy, I have to knit a striped hoodie, which I've never done before, for my fiance to make it fit him perfectly. And then I have to make a 2-color fingering weight color work sweater that is a very complicated design for myself in my larger size, all by October. And it's midway through June. I gotta get a move on. So, I had just finished the pink sweater. And I kicked myself because instead of making the pink sweater, which did not fit me in the end anyway, and which I'm probably going to frog, I decided this weekend, I was thinking more about it, I am going to frog it. Instead of spending all of that time making something that didn't fit me properly, I could have been working on this and getting this done so I could give myself even more time to do my sweater. But I didn't, and that was my own choice, and this is where I am. So I was on a bit of a deadline with this. My hard and fast deadline that I was not prepared to go over was July 31st. I wanted to give myself a minimum of 2 months to do my sweater, which still might not really be enough. I am going to have to have a fire under me to get mine going. But I finished this slightly earlier than I planned to. So I was very, very happy about that. Today is July 24th. So I am finishing this sweater 7 days before I said I was going to finish it. So I am exactly a week early. So I'm now giving myself 2 months and 1 week to knit my sweater, which is not a lot more time than I was originally going to have with my original deadline of this sweater. But I finished it early, so I now have that little bit of extra time. So let's talk more about the fit of this sweater. Like I said, once I added the hood, it cinched in the neck and that fit better, but I still didn't need to knit as much of the body as the pattern was telling me to. I don't know if it was because we chose a size for Doyle that is technically bigger than he really is. So to give you some context, Doyle has a 45-inch chest. And we chose to go with size 5, which was a 48-inch chest, because Doyle wanted to have some positive ease. He didn't want the sweater to be like really snug to him. If we'd have gone with size 4, that one was a 44-inch sweater. This kind of annoys me about patterns when they have a 4-inch difference in bust sizes between sizes, because that just gives you limited options. If there was a 46-inch, that would have been great. That would have been perfect for Doyle, because then it would have given him 1 inch of positive ease. Now he has 3. And he has 3 inches of positive ease in the chest, which is the largest part of his body. So he has more like 6 to 7 inches of positive ease when it comes to the body and the waist of the sweater. And the sleeves too, but I'll get into the body first. So I think the pattern is similar to a lot of female patterns, where just because you're doing more stitches width-wise, they think you need a longer length. And that's something that happens in a lot of patterns. I'm not, gonna poo-poo on this pattern because it did that. I just want to give you, as my viewers, all of the information that I gleaned from doing this pattern so that you can make a judgment for yourself. So what I ended up doing is I just kept having Doyle try it on. And I think at the end, he was getting annoyed with the amount of times that not annoyed. I think in the end, he was getting a little, oh, gotta try on the sweater again. Okay. Not annoyed, not frustrated, just like, okay, I gotta stop what I'm doing and try on my sweater again. I was just interrupting him a lot in order to get him to try on his sweater, because I wanted to make sure the length would be perfect. So I forget how long I did the underarm to the waist. Looks like it's about like maybe 13 inches. And then I did 3 inches of ribbing. It said to only do 2.5, but I did 2.5, and it just didn't look like it was enough ribbing. So I did an extra 1/2 inch. So I have a 3-inch ribbing on the body. And like I said earlier, I did it in a 1 size smaller needle than the pattern recommended. And that makes it like really nice and like pulls it in. And of course I did my tubular bind off, so it's nice and stretchy. It's very comfortable. Doyle loves the fit. He's very happy with how it fits comfort-wise. And for the sleeves, I had the same problem where it wanted me to do way more length than I needed. Again, so you needed to knit a certain amount before you started your decreases. And I got to that point, then I started doing my decreases. And I got to the final decrease, and I had Doyle try it on, because it said, once you get to the final decrease, knit until it measures X number of inches, and then start your ribbing. So I had finished the last decrease, and I measured how long this was. It did not meet the length that it had to be, so I knew I needed to knit a little bit of straight knitting after I've done all the decreases. I had Doyle try it on, and it was already down to here on him. And that's without doing any of the ribbing. So I had to rip back a bit. It was fine. It was easy. It was a small circumference, but it meant that I had to go back earlier than the last decrease. In fact, I think I needed to do 14 decreases, and I had to go back to only 12 decreases, because that's how much too long it was. And then it said do 2.5 inches for the cuff, and I did 2.5. It fit perfectly for Doyle's length after I had adjusted the length of the stockinette portion. So in general, this pattern, as it's written for size 5, which is 48-inch chest, was in general too big for Doyle, but it fit his chest. So we went with that, and I made adjustments for everything else. If I'd have been aware of this, I would have done more adjustments earlier on. So for example, I would have had him try on the body after I'd maybe only done 2 inches of the body once I split for arms and body. And then I would have started doing some decreases so that I could have gotten more of a tapered fit for Doyle. I'm going to keep that in mind for when I make future sweaters for him, because I want to make sure it's something that fits him perfectly. That's the whole point of making your own clothes, is to make it fit you perfectly. So that's a lesson that I learned. And every time I tell Doyle, oh, it's not perfect, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I could have done better with this, he just stops me because he says, you made me a sweater. And he is so grateful for the fact that I made him a sweater. Like, I hand knit every single stitch. He watched me make this sweater from start to finish because, I was doing it while watching TV together. We were at my parents' cottage one weekend and we were all sitting together and I was working on it. Like, he saw every single bit of love that went into this sweater, and he appreciates that so much. And in general, he loves the fit because it's a relaxed hoodie. And he says he is going to wear the shit out of this sweater. So I am just so excited to see him wear it and cuddle him in this sweater. He looks gorgeous in it because the colors are so beautiful, especially with his coloring. He has dark hair and he has green eyes, and it just stuns. Oh, it stuns. I love it. I love him in it. And, I have to be less critical of my own work, and I need to remember this was a project of love, and it is the first sweater that I'm ever going to make Doyle. Did my first sweater for myself turn out? No, not at all. In fact, I didn't like my first 4 sweaters that I made. The first sweater that I made for myself that I was happy with and that I still have and still wear was the 5th sweater that I made for myself. So why did I expect the first one for Doyle to turn out perfectly? Because I'm a more experienced knitter and I've been knitting longer? Probably, but this is the first menswear project I've ever done. It's the first hoodie I've ever done. I need to be kinder to myself, and I need to stop being so hard on myself, especially when it comes to my craft. Because this is my hobby. This is something that's supposed to make me happy and relaxed. It's not supposed to be something that I'm critiquing myself about or nitpicking or saying, oh, you did a terrible job at that, you shouldn't be doing knitting. That's not nice to myself. Why would I do that? So I'm working on being happier with the end result of this project. I will probably be even happier once we take our final pictures and see how it fits and see the colors and everything. We're going to take them probably around sunset time, so it's going to be beautiful golden light, and I'm just going to be, they're going to be beautiful. I know they are, and I think that's going to help me step back and see, wow, I did a great job. So that is all about the Montrealer Hoodie. That was really long-winded. And I feel like I was just complaining a lot, so I'm really sorry if I've just been really complainy. It's a beautiful pattern. I love the striping. I want to be more aware the next time I knit something for Doyle to start customizing earlier on. Hey everyone, Editing Whitney here. I was going through my footage today and I realized that I never answered the question, will I knit this pattern again? I think you can already tell based on the problems that I had with this that I am not going to knit this pattern again. I had problems with the fit. I had issues with not needing to knit the length as long as the pattern indicated for the sleeves and the body. I took the hood design from a completely different pattern and put it onto this one because I didn't want to follow the directions for the hood, etc. But there is another reason why I will not knit this pattern again. Since finishing the hoodie, I have learned some information about the designer that makes me not want to knit their patterns again. So the pattern is designed by Vincent Deslandes. who is known as Bidels on Instagram. And I have since learned that he is known for bullying and harassment, particularly towards Quebecois dyers and designers. He has been known to bully in person and online. And apparently there was an event back in February that really brought his bullying and harassment into the spotlight. Now, I didn't know any of this when I chose this pattern, and if I did, I certainly would not have chosen it. So I feel kind of bad that I am giving attention to a designer that I do not want to support anymore. And I wanted you all to be aware of that. So I don't know a lot of the specifics, but I have found an Instagram live that was saved and you can still watch on Boutique Crochet Co.'s Instagram. I'm going to link the live video down below that details some of what Vincent was responsible for doing in the form of harassment and bullying. I severely condone harassment and bullying, and I do not want to support this designer in any way anymore. I was talking to Doyle about it today, and he asked me if I felt gross about his sweater now that I know all of this about the designer. And a little bit, yes. But at the same time, I think to myself, it is knit in yarn dyed by Kate from Red Door Fiber Studios, who is an incredible person to follow online. She's a very positive person. She's very funny. She does a lot for the community. She donates to good causes. So that's one really, really good thing about the project. And I took the hood design from a completely different pattern. So the hood part of the hoodie is not even Vincent's design. It is Alexander Tavel of Two of Wands design. So I like to think that I'm not entirely grossed out and upset about this pattern because of the connotations connected to the designer. I think there's enough in this project that makes it still a really good project. And of course I made it for Doyle, who I absolutely adore and love, and he looks amazing in it. And I don't want a bad person who designed a pattern to influence how I feel about something that I poured so much love into for the person that I love the most. So that's how I feel about it. I just wanted you all to know what I now know about this designer so that you can make an informed decision about whether or not you want to support him by buying the pattern or not. If you are still in the market for a good hoodie pattern, I have two suggestions for you. Of course, the first one is the Clubhouse Raglan hoodie by Alexi of Two of Wands. I can attest that the hood instructions are excellent. They're extremely well written, and it created a really nice fitting hood. Looks great. So the next time I knit a hoodie, it will definitely be that one because I've already tested out the hood part. And the other pattern that I want to recommend is the Hot Toddy hoodie by Chantal of Knititude, one of my absolute favorite designers. She designed this one last year, and although it is specifically a men's hoodie, it can be for both genders or all genders. And I can attest from having knit other of Chantal's patterns that she does excellent patterns, very well written, very easy to understand, excellent for sizing. So I just wanted to give you those two options in case you wanted to knit a hoodie. And it's very easy to modify the striping pattern from this one into any other hoodie pattern because it is a simple 2-color stripe of 8 rows of one color, 4 rows of the other color. So pretty easy to duplicate. I also forgot to mention that I did not add the pocket to my version of the Montrealer hoodie, mainly because Doyle doesn't use pockets on sweaters very much. So it didn't really seem useful to knit the pocket when he wasn't even going to use it. But if you do like a pocket on your hoodie, the Clubhouse Raglan has a front pocket. If you are okay without a front pocket, the Hot Toddy hoodie does not have a front pocket. So there are some two choices for you. this is definitely not going to be the last thing that I knit for Doyle. I have more plans for him in the future. The next thing I'm going to make for him, like garment-wise, I don't know if it'll be next year or the year after or the year after that. I'm going to make him a Gigi Cardi by Knititude, who is one of my favorite designers, and I want to make us both matching Gigi Cardis. I bought some alpaca yarn from Knit Picks that I got in a gray color, which online it looked like it was more of a lighter tone gray. It arrived and it was very much that like concrete gray, like the very standard mid-tone gray. And that shade doesn't look really good on me. It's not good for my coloring, but it's great for Doyle's coloring. So I'm going to make him a Gigi Cardi with the alpaca yarn. And I found some yarn in my stash that is also alpaca, but it's two alpacas. I bought some yarn years ago from Gaspereau Valley Fibers, which is one of my favorite local yarn stores. It's in the Annapolis Valley, so it's about an hour's drive from where I live, but it's worth the drive. And I got some no-name as in like there was no brand associated with it. It was just two large hanks that said so many grams alpaca and undyed. It was undyed because it was just the natural alpaca color. And it was brown. It's like a beautiful, beautiful, like rich chocolate brown. And I never knew what to do with it because it was just slightly less yarn than I needed because it was a DK weight. And it was just slightly less yardage than I needed to make something for myself. So I just hung on to it because it was beautiful. I knew I would find a pattern eventually. Maybe it would be a cropped cardigan. Maybe it would be a really, really big wrap or something. I knew I would find something. I just kept it in stash for a while. And then I noticed one time when I was in Have a Yarn, which is my other favorite local yarn store, which is down in the South Shore in Mahone Bay, also an hour from where I live, but worth the drive. And I noticed that they had a chocolate brown brushed alpaca silk by Drops, and it was a perfect match for this no-name alpaca that I bought. And when I used the two together, they match perfectly for gauge for the Gigi Cardi. So I'm going to knit one for myself in this beautiful chocolate brown color, which is much more of a color that I can wear. So that is going to be the next thing that I knit for Doyle. But it won't be anytime soon because I've got to get knitting on stuff for myself. Not because I'm not wanting to make something for him, but I have things that I need to get done. So for one thing, I have to knit my engagement sweater, which is the Estrella sweater by Bad Wolf Girl Knits, I think is her handle. And then after that, I will have 1 year because our engagement shoot is almost exactly the same date as our wedding, but obviously separated by a year. So once I finish my engagement sweater, I'll probably finish that very, very shortly before we have to do our engagement photo shoot because I'm going to be down to the wire, I'm pretty sure. So after that, I'll have exactly 1 year to knit my wedding cardigan, my maid of honor's wedding cardigan. I only have one attendant. It's my best friend. And I wanted us to have matching cardigans, so I am going to be knitting them for both of us. Same pattern. And then I need to knit my cardigan that I'm going to wear while getting ready the morning of my wedding. I'm not a fan of those weird silk robes that people wear. It's not my style. And I'm getting married in October. It can be a little chilly. So it was my idea to knit something in blue and have that as my something blue. And then, of course, I'll have like a little something that I'll wear the day of the wedding that will be in my wedding outfit that will be blue as well. Because I'm a little traditional. I want the something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. But I did want a blue cardigan to wear while getting ready in the morning. Because I thought it'd be really cute. So I have to knit 3 cardigans in a year's time. It should be okay. That's not too bad. And my best friend is much smaller than me. So I'm like a 2 to 3X. She's only like a large. So hers won't take as long. But just as much love will go into hers as will go into mine. And I'm really, really excited for us to take pictures together the day of the wedding wearing our matching cardigans. Hers will be a little different color, I think. We haven't decided what color hers will be because she hasn't bought her dress yet, and we're going to pick it based on her dress. We have an idea of what color we want it to be, but, gotta wait till she gets the dress. Mine, of course, is going to be a creamy color because I want it to match my dress, and my dress is not pure white. It's a little creamy color. Ivory, I think is what they call it. So I wanted my cardigan to match that. So those are all my upcoming knitting plans. I usually don't chat about that much on my podcast because I'm known to always change my mind and always do something different. This past year, I said I did a video at the beginning of the year, which was my knitting plans for 2022, and I think I said I had 5 items that I was going to make. Yeah, I think I'm only going to get 2 or 3 of those done. I think 3. Definitely 3 because one of them was my Augustine's number 21 sweater dress, which I finished. The second one was Doyle's Montrealer Hoodie. Check. Done. And the third one that I know I'm going to get finished is my own engagement sweater, the Astraeus sweater. So, unless things go terribly wrong, knock on wood, I have, my chair is partly wood. So unless something goes terribly wrong, I will, of course, have that finished. So the other 2 things that I said I was going to make, one of which I just don't have time to make this year, and the other I frogged because I didn't like it. So I change my mind all the time. So generally I don't really talk about my knitting plans because they change all the time. But I definitely know I'm going to knit a sweater for me for my wedding day, my getting ready sweater, and my maid of honor sweater. So those are really set in stone. So I know those will happen. Anyway, let's move on to my book review of the episode. And I've been having a hard time with books. So my last video, which was my Sugar Plum Jumper, I talked about reading a book called The Sea House. And I said at the time it was a very okay book. It stayed an okay book. For me, it was like a solid 2 to 3 stars. It was nothing to write home about, but it was not terrible either. It was just an okay read. And for some reason, after I finished that book, I had a wicked hard time picking up another book. And it was not the fault of that book. I honestly don't know what it was. But over a month went by, and I, honest to goodness, did not pick up a book. Or if I did, I flipped through it. Nothing was catching my attention. Nothing was keeping me engaged. I just didn't feel like reading at all, which is really unlike me. It felt really unnatural. And I've realized now, because I did a little bit of combing on the internet to see why don't you want to read, look at articles like that and whatnot. And I found an article that had a list of reasons why you might not want to read. And one of them was your brain is too busy. They didn't use it in that terms. They said a more scientific term. But the way that I interpret it was your brain is too busy because you're using your brain too much. And it dawned on me, I have been having a bit of a time working on Doyle's sweater, worrying about the fit, correcting the fit, trying to find different ways of doing the hood. Like, my brain was all over the place. And my brain was busy. It was too busy thinking about that sweater all the time to concentrate on reading. As I got closer to the end of the pattern, I think it was maybe, today's Sunday, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, I was at work and I was just struck by the feeling, I want to read. I want to pick up a book and read. I think it's because I was surfing Goodreads and just a couple things popped out to me. But I knew which book I wanted to read. It's been on my radar for a while, and I've had it on my bookshelf for a while. But on Monday night, I picked it up, and Doyle and I always read for about half an hour or so before we go to bed. And I picked it up, and I read the first chapter, which was about a 40-page chapter, so it was a long chapter. But I got into it, and thank goodness my reading mojo is back. I feel like reading again. And now that I'm done Doyle's sweater, I am going to take the rest of the day today to just read. I'm going to take a break from knitting for the rest of the day. Maybe sometime in the evening I'll get casted on for my sweater, but I don't want to do a lot of knitting today. I want to do almost no knitting. I'm going to read because it's a nice day. I'm going to sit in the shade. There's a nice breeze outside too, and I'm just going to read, and it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be relaxing, and I'm going to love it. Before I get run away, let me show you what I'm reading. Ta-da! Surprising nobody, probably. I'm reading another fantasy book. But this fantasy book is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, I think is how you pronounce it. If it's not, sorry. This book is highly recommended to anyone who likes ACOTAR. And Doyle is currently reading ACOTAR. I'm so excited. I've been wanting him to read it for a while, and he's finally picked it up. I was never going to force him to read it, but he knew how much it means to me, especially because I was knitting his sweater out of yarn dyed based on characters from these books. And my yarn from my sweater is dyed based on a place in the books. So he knows how much they mean to me, and he finally felt like reading fantasy again, because he was really not feeling like reading fantasy for a long time, because he kind of wore himself out reading a lot of fantasy. So if I couldn't read ACOTAR, I was going to read the next best thing, which was this series. I also sort of made it a bit of a challenge for myself this year that I wanted to mainly read books that I had not read before, because last year I did a lot of comfort reading and I reread a lot of books that I'd already read. And you can see behind me, I have a lot of books, and most of these are books that I have not read. So, gotta get going on them. But I needed something really good to read. I've been recommended this book a lot. Of course, Kate from Red Door Fiber Studios is also a fan of this series, and she's talked about it on her Instagram, so it was on my radar. I bought it a couple months ago, and I just let it sit on the shelf because I wasn't in the mood to read it at the time, and I wanted to fully absorb it like I did ACOTAR. So I waited. And earlier this week, I felt like reading, and I felt like reading this book. Now, I'm only 100 pages in, but I love it. I'm really happy with it. It's a really enjoyable read. It's not perfectly written. It kind of reminds me of early Sarah J. Maas. So Throne of Glass. It's not quite polished when it comes to the writing, but I like the story. I like the characters. I'm intrigued. Something that I like about it actually is that there's not a lot of early build-up. You're just kind of plunked into this character's life, midway through her life kind of thing. Well, not midway, she's only 18. But it doesn't really do a lot of setup saying, this is the world, this is the main character from the day that she was born. It gives you enough of her backstory to understand her, but then you learn more as you get into the book. And I kind of liked that. I liked that it didn't just faff about giving you lots of info dumping that doesn't matter all that much. It really gets you right into the story. So I really liked that. Friggin' love that the main character is, it's not outwardly said, but it's highly inferred that she is a plus-size character, or that she is a curvaceous character. So, love that. Super excited about that. And yeah, if you like fantasy romance, I can't give you a full review because, like I said, I'm only 100 pages in. It's over 600 pages. Let's see if I can get it without seeing anything from the end. Yeah, 610 pages. So I'm 1/6 of the way through. So I can't give a really good review of it yet. All I can say is that I've picked it up and I'm very excited about reading it. And the sexy scenes start in chapter 2. So it's getting right in there. Love it. So yeah, it's a fun read. I'm having a really good time reading this book. Some of the conflict is starting to like come out now, and I'm excited to see where it goes next. If you're a new viewer, thank you so much for joining. And if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. If you like my content, give me a like, subscribe to my channel, check out my other videos. I am going to have a special episode coming out soon, as in like probably next week, because it is my 1-year anniversary of being here on YouTube with the Knitted by Whitney podcast. And very excited about that. I have planned a special video for that, so keep an eye out for that coming up. And until then, everyone take care. Bye.